I was halfway to work when it hit me. I'd left my phone at home. It wasn't even a Monday, but it felt like one. Coffee spilled on my sleeve, missed my usual green light, and now this. I thought about leaving it, figured I could survive a day without checking emails or scrolling through news. But something gnawed at me, an itch I couldn't scratch. I made a quick U-turn, blaming it on needing my calendar for meetings, though deep down, it felt like something else was pulling me back. Traffic was thick, like the universe was trying to slow me down, to give me time to think. Emily had been distant lately. Not cold exactly, just off. Less laughter, fewer random texts during the day, and an invisible wall between us that neither of us talked about. She'd always been the kind of woman whose presence filled a room, her smile bright enough to make even the dullest days feel lighter. But that glow had faded, replaced by tired eyes and excuses, just stressed. Work's been crazy. I'm exhausted. I believed her at first. I wanted to. Then there was Nick, my younger brother. He'd moved in with us 3 months ago after losing his job, said he needed a fresh start, a place to crash while he figured things out. I didn't hesitate. That's what brothers do, right? You don't question it. Nick had always been the charming one, quick with a joke, easy to like. He helped out around the house, picked Mason up from school, even cooked dinner some nights. Emily seemed to enjoy having him around, laughing at his jokes, her eyes lighting up in ways I hadn't seen in a while. But I told myself not to overthink it. It was just family. I pulled into the driveway, noticing Nick's car parked at an odd angle, like he'd been in a rush. My stomach tightened, but I brushed it off. Maybe he had an early interview or forgot something. The house was unusually quiet when I stepped inside. No cartoons blaring, no Mason's laughter echoing from his room. He was at school, of course, but the silence felt heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. I headed toward the bedroom, assuming my phone was on the nightstand. But as I passed the hallway, something made me stop. A faint noise, a soft, rhythmic creak, coming from Mason's room. My pulse quickened. Maybe Emily was tidying up, changing sheets or something. But that sound wasn't right. It was too steady. I moved quietly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to peek through. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sick feeling rising in my chest. I didn't want to look, but curiosity, or maybe instinct, pushed me forward. What I saw froze me in place. Emily, Nick, in Mason's bed. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood there, hidden in the sliver of shadow, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they'd hear it. Their bodies tangled in sheets decorated with dinosaurs and rocket ships, the same sheets I'd tucked Mason into every night. For a moment, my mind refused to process it. My brain screamed this isn't real, but my eyes wouldn't lie. Emily's face was flushed, her hair a mess of sweat-damp strands sticking to her neck. Nick looked relaxed, his arm draped over her like he belonged there. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. I could have burst in, screamed, punched Nick square in his smug face. But something stopped me. A cold, calculating part of me whispered, "Not yet." I pulled my phone from the charger on the kitchen counter, my hands trembling. I didn't open the door. I didn't say a word. Instead, I hit record. I filmed everything, long enough to capture the undeniable truth. Their voices, soft whispers mixed with occasional laughter, like they were in some sick, private world. My hand was steady, but inside, I was crumbling. When I finally stopped recording, I backed away silently, my heart racing like I'd just committed a crime. I left the house quietly, the door clicking shut behind me like a final nail in a coffin. Back in my car, I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the video on my phone. Watching it felt surreal, like I was outside of my own life, witnessing someone else's nightmare. But it was real, every second of it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb. I drove back to work as if nothing had happened, my face a mask, my mind replaying the video on a loop. My brother, my wife, in my son's bed. The confrontation would come, but not yet. I wasn't ready. I needed a plan. The days that followed felt like living in a parallel universe. I went through the motions, work, home, dinner with Emily, even helping Mason with his homework. While that video sat like a ticking time bomb in my phone. Every time I looked at her, my skin crawled. Every time Nick cracked one of his dumb jokes, I had to fight the urge to wipe that smug grin off his face with my fist. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I watched, observed, collected the pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Emily acted like nothing was wrong. She'd kiss me on the cheek when I got home, her lips brushing my skin like we were still us, like she wasn't sleeping with my brother in the room where our son kept his toys. She'd ask about my day, tell me about hers, sprinkle in little complaints about how tired she was, how hard life could be. The same woman who claimed exhaustion still had enough energy to screw my brother, while Mason's dinosaur nightlight glowed softly beside them. Nick played the role of the helpful house guest perfectly. He'd pick Mason up from school, ruffle his hair like the cool uncle, then head to the kitchen to whip up dinner. I'd sit at the table, nodding along as he talked about job interviews that probably never existed, all the while picturing him tangled in sheets that should have only known my family's innocence, not his betrayal. Mason was the only bright spot in the house, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath his feet. His laughter was a cruel contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I'd watch him play with his Legos, building little towers, and wonder how the hell I was supposed to protect him from the mess his mother and uncle were creating. At night, I'd lie in bed beside Emily, her back turned to me like always. The space between us felt like an ocean. I'd stare at the ceiling, fists clenched under the blanket, listening to her breathe, wondering how many lies could fit between each exhale. The video haunted me. I watched it more times than I care to admit, not because I needed confirmation, but because I couldn't believe it was real. Every detail was burned into my brain. The way Emily arched her back, the soft moan she made, the way Nick's hands gripped her like she was his. I hated them for it, but I hated myself more for not smashing the door down when I had the chance. But patience is a weapon. I started gathering more than just evidence. I wanted to see how deep this went, how long it had been festering under my nose. I paid attention to their routines, when they texted, when they found excuses to be alone. Emily would run errands, while Nick conveniently stayed back to watch Mason. She'd come home with bags from stores she clearly never visited, her face flushed like she'd just sprinted a marathon. Nick would stroll out of his room shortly after, stretching like he'd just woken from a nap. One evening, I pretended to forget my wallet and doubled back after leaving for the grocery store. I parked a few houses down, heart racing like I was pulling off a heist. Through the front window, I saw them. Emily on the couch, Nick too close, their bodies angled toward each other, her hand resting on his thigh like it belonged there. I snapped a photo. Proof. More proof. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, screenshots, even snippets of overheard conversations when they thought I wasn't around. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to bury them in their own lies. The irony? They thought they were smart. They thought they were careful. Idiots. One night, after Mason had gone to bed and Emily was taking a bath, Nick sat on the back porch smoking a cigarette. I joined him, acting like nothing was wrong. We talked about football, the job market, even cracked a few beers. He laughed, that easy, carefree laugh he'd always had. And I laughed too, because soon enough, he wouldn't have anything to laugh about. I asked him, "You ever feel like people aren't who you think they are?" He gave me this clueless look and shrugged. All the time, man. Life's full of surprises. I almost lost it right there. But instead, I smiled, took a sip of my beer, and thought, yeah, it is. The confrontation was coming. But not yet. I needed it to hurt. The day I'd been planning for weeks finally arrived, but it didn't feel like I expected. No cinematic thunder rumbling in the distance, no ominous music in the background. Just an ordinary Saturday morning. The kind where the smell of coffee mixed with the faint scent of cereal from Mason's half-finished breakfast. Ordinary, at least on the surface. But beneath that thin veneer of normalcy, everything was about to change. Emily was in the kitchen, her hair pulled into that lazy bun she always did when she didn't care to impress. She wore one of my old college t-shirts, the irony of it punching me square in the chest. Nick sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. Mason was in the living room, sprawled on the floor with his Legos, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, imagined all the ways it could go down. Me flipping the table, screaming, maybe even swinging at Nick. But when it was finally here, all that rage felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I cleared my throat. Hey, can you both come here for a sec? Emily glanced up, annoyed at first, then plastered on that fake smile she perfected over the years. Nick followed, his usual lazy swagger in full display. They both sat, clueless, while I remained standing. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up with the very video that had been eating away at me every day since I recorded it. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I was calm. Too calm. I've been thinking. I started, my voice steady. You know how sometimes you miss things? Little things. And then one day, it all just clicks. Emily frowned, her smile fading slightly. Nick barely looked up from his phone. Like forgetting your phone at home, I continued. You don't think much of it at first, but sometimes, forgetting something can show you exactly what you've been missing. Nick finally glanced up, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Emily crossed her arms, shifting in her seat. Without another word, I pressed play. The room filled with the sounds I'd heard on repeat. Whispers, soft gasps, their voices mingling like a twisted soundtrack to my humiliation. Emily's face drained of color, her mouth opening slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. Nick went rigid, his cocky grin vanishing like it had never existed. I let the video play longer than necessary, every second slicing deeper. Then I locked my phone and set it on the table, the silence screaming louder than any words could. Emily finally broke. I can explain. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that startled even me. Explain? Sure. I'd love to hear it. Was it a mistake? Did you slip and fall into my brother? Her face twisted with guilt, or maybe just the fear of being caught. It's not what you think. I leaned in, resting my hands on the table, my face inches from hers. It's exactly what I think. Nick shifted in his seat, clearing his throat like he was about to say something clever. I shot him a look that could have set the house on fire. Don't even start. Emily's eyes welled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness, just an emptiness I couldn't describe. How long? I asked, my voice cold. She didn't answer. How long, Emily? She swallowed hard. A few months. I nodded, the confirmation hitting me like a brick, even though I already knew. While I was working to keep this family together, youing my brother, in our house, in our son's bed. Nick finally spoke, his voice low. Look, man, it just happened. I snapped. I lunged at him, my fist connecting with his jaw before I even processed the movement. He stumbled back, crashing into the chair, clutching his face, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Emily screamed, trying to pull me back, but I shrugged her off like she was nothing. Don't you ever call me man again, I growled, my chest heaving. Nick stayed on the floor, his eyes wide with shock and fear. Good. I turned to Emily. I want you both out. Today. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. Her tears flowed freely now, but I didn't care. She'd made her choice the moment she betrayed me. The woman I married was gone, replaced by a stranger I couldn't even look at. As I walked away, Mason looked up from his Legos, his innocent eyes meeting mine. Daddy, what's wrong? I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. Nothing, buddy. We're just making some changes. Because sometimes, change isn't a choice. It's survival. After the confrontation, the house felt different. Not quieter, just emptier, like the walls themselves had recoiled from the ugliness that unfolded within them. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed that used to mean comfort, staring at the space where Emily once slept. It was like trying to process a death, not of a person, but of everything I thought my life was. By morning, Emily was still there. She'd slept on the couch, or pretended to. Nick was gone. He left after I hit him, probably nursing his bruised face and fragile ego somewhere. I hoped the pain in his jaw throbbed as a constant reminder of what he'd done. But Emily? She lingered, maybe thinking there was still a chance to fix this. She was wrong. When Mason woke up, oblivious to the storm that had torn through our family, he shuffled into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Emily tried to keep up the act, pouring him cereal, asking how he slept. Her voice was softer, careful, like she was tiptoeing around the wreckage. I couldn't stand it. The sight of her pretending everything was normal made my skin crawl. I packed her things while she sat in the living room, silent tears rolling down her face. She didn't try to stop me, didn't beg. Maybe she knew it would be pointless. I didn't say much either. What was there to say? Thanks for ruining my life? It felt too small for the damage done. When I handed her the suitcase, she finally spoke. Where am I supposed to go? I stared at her, disbelief twisting my face. To hell, preferably. But anywhere that's not here will do. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. Mason was in the other room, playing with his toys, blissfully unaware of the way his world was shifting under his feet. I didn't want him to see her leave, didn't want to plant that memory in his mind. So I waited until he was distracted, then opened the door. Emily hesitated, standing there with her bag in hand. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I laughed, short, bitter, and hollow. But you did. And you meant every moment of it when you thought I'd never find out. She stepped outside without another word. I shut the door behind her, locking it, as if that could somehow keep the pain out. But it was already inside. The days that followed were a blur. I functioned on autopilot. Wake up, get Mason ready for school, go to work, come home, repeat. The routine was the only thing holding me together. But every time I saw Mason's bed, the one where I found them, something inside me twisted. I wanted to burn it, throw it out, anything to erase the memory. But I couldn't. Mason loved that bed. It wasn't his fault. I started seeing the cracks in places I hadn't before. The way Emily's perfume still lingered on the couch, faint and bitter. The notes she'd left on the fridge, pick up milk, now felt like graffiti on a tombstone. Every corner of the house was haunted, not by ghosts, but by the life I thought I had. Nick tried to reach out. Texts, calls, a pathetic attempt to explain himself. I'm sorry, man. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I never replied. There's no apology in the world big enough to cover what he did. The worst part? I couldn't stop remembering our childhood, birthday parties, family vacations, all the times I had his back. And this is how he repaid me. Emily reached out too, asking if we could talk. She wanted to meet, to explain, to see Mason. I agreed, not because I wanted to hear her excuses, but because I needed to look her in the eye one last time. We met at a park, neutral ground. She looked different, tired, worn down. Good. It meant she was suffering too. She started with the usual, I miss you. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I let her talk, let her dig her hole deeper with every word. When she finally stopped, I leaned back, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, it meant enough for you to risk everything. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. I don't need your explanations. I don't want your apologies. I just need you to understand that you don't get to come back from this. You don't get to rewrite what happened. You don't get to be the victim. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No pity, no love, just emptiness. She asked about Mason, if she could see him. Eventually, I said, when I'm sure he won't look at you and see the same betrayal I do. I left her there, sitting on a park bench with her regrets. She could keep them. I had enough of my own. But as I walked away, for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. Not healed, but lighter. Because sometimes, survival means walking away without looking back. The house felt quieter without Emily's presence. Not peaceful, just hollow, like someone had scooped out the heart of it and left the shell behind. I thought once she was gone, things would feel easier, like ripping off a Band-Aid. But the wound underneath was still raw, festering with every reminder of what she'd done. The echoes of her voice, her laughter, the smell of her shampoo lingering on the pillows. It was like living with a ghost. Mason didn't understand. He'd ask, When's mommy coming home? With that innocent curiosity only kids have, like she was just on a trip or running late from work. I'd force a smile, swallow the lump in my throat, and say something vague. She's staying somewhere else for a while. I couldn't give him the truth. Not yet. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that his mother blew up our family for a few stolen moments with his uncle? Co-parenting wasn't even on my radar at first. Emily texted, called, tried to set up visits, but I ignored most of it. The idea of seeing her again, pretending to be civil, made my skin crawl. But Mason missed her, and no matter how much I hated her, he didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. So eventually, I agreed to a supervised visit at a neutral place, a coffee shop near the park. She showed up looking different. Not physically, but something in her had shifted. Less put together, like the weight of her choices had finally settled on her shoulders. Good. She deserved that weight. She deserved to feel crushed by it. Mason lit up when he saw her, running into her arms like nothing had changed. She cried, holding him so tight I thought she might break. I stood there, arms crossed, watching like an outsider in my own life. She looked up at me over Mason's shoulder, her eyes filled with something. Guilt, regret, maybe even hope. But I gave her nothing in return. We sat awkwardly while Mason sipped hot chocolate, oblivious to the tension thick enough to choke on. Emily tried small talk, asking about school, about his friends, about me. I answered with curt replies, one-word sentences, letting her feel the distance between us like a chasm she'd never cross again. After the visit, she texted me, "Can we talk? Just us." I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen for a long time, debating. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it never existed. But another part, the part that wasn't done bleeding, wanted answers. Not closure, just clarity on how two people could destroy everything for nothing. So, we met. Same park, different bench. She looked nervous, like she was the one walking into enemy territory. "I'm sorry," she started, her voice soft, almost rehearsed. "I know that doesn't mean much, but I am." I nodded, not because I accepted it, but because I was waiting for the real reason she'd asked to meet. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she continued, wringing her hands. "Nick was just there, and I felt—" "Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't you dare make this about feelings. You didn't trip and fall into his bed. You made choices." She flinched, looking down at her hands like they held the answers. "I was lonely," she whispered. "You were always working, always stressed." Nick listened. He made me feel seen. I laughed, bitter and sharp. "So it's my fault?" "No," she said quickly, her eyes meeting mine. "It's not your fault. It's mine. I don't know how I got here." "That's the problem," I said, standing up. "You never thought about where here was until it was too late." She reached out, but I stepped back. Her touch was poison now. "Nick's gone," she said softly. "I haven't seen him since that day." I didn't care. Nick could rot in whatever hole he crawled into. It wouldn't change anything. She wiped a tear, trying to steady her voice. "I just wanted to say, I miss you." I stared at her for a long moment, letting the words hang in the air. "I miss who I thought you were," I replied, turning to leave. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just steal your trust. It steals the person you thought you knew, and leaves a stranger behind. After that meeting at the park, Emily's words echoed in my head. "I miss you." It wasn't love. It was regret, desperation wrapped in nostalgia for a life she torched. And me? I didn't miss her. I missed the illusion of who she pretended to be, the comfortable lie I thought was our life. The woman who made pancakes on Sundays, who kissed me goodbye before work, that woman was gone long before I found the truth. I'd just been too blind to see it. But the aftermath wasn't as clean as slamming a door and walking away. Real life doesn't work like that. There were legal matters, custody schedules, and the emotional wreckage that Mason didn't understand. His questions became sharper. Why doesn't mommy live with us anymore? Did I do something wrong? That one gutted me. No, buddy, I'd say, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. None of this is your fault. But how do you explain betrayal to a child without breaking something inside them? Emily's visits became more frequent, though they always felt like a performance. She'd bring gifts, overcompensating with toys and sweets, trying to patch holes she'd ripped open. Mason didn't see through it, of course. He was just happy to see his mom. But I did. And every forced smile she gave him made my resentment grow like a wildfire I couldn't control. Nick stayed gone. No texts, no calls. He disappeared as easily as he'd slipped into Emily's life behind my back. Part of me expected him to show up one day, maybe to apologize, or at least try. But he didn't. Coward. One evening, after I put Mason to bed, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family vacations, birthdays, holidays, frozen moments where we all smiled like nothing could touch us. In one picture, Nick was holding Mason on his shoulders, Emily laughing beside him. They looked like a perfect family. My stomach twisted. How long had they been faking it? How many of those smiles were real? I slammed the phone down, breathing hard like I'd been running. But there was nowhere to run from this. The betrayal wasn't just in the past. It was stitched into every memory. I started drinking more than I should have. Just enough to take the edge off, to quiet the noise in my head. But the problem with numbing the pain is that it always comes back when the buzz fades. Stronger, sharper. One night, half drunk and angry, I texted Nick, "You're a fucking coward." No response. Not that I expected one, but it felt good to send it. Like throwing a punch in the dark, even if it never landed. The next day, Emily showed up for her scheduled visit with Mason. She looked tired, like life was catching up to her. Good. I hoped it was chasing her like a debt collector. While Mason played in his room, she lingered in the doorway. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I laughed, bitter and dry. "You don't get to ask me that." She looked down, her hands stuffed in the pockets of her coat. I want to fix things." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me like cold water. "Fix things? Emily, you can't unfuck my brother and rewind time." Her face crumpled, tears welling up, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, just exhaustion. "You think saying sorry makes it better?" I continued, my voice rising. "You think showing up with toys for Mason erases what you did?" She shook her head, wiping her face. "I don't expect forgiveness. Good," I snapped. "Because you'll never get it." She left without another word, her footsteps echoing down the hall. I watched from the window as she got into her car, her hands trembling on the steering wheel before she drove away. For a moment, I felt powerful, like I'd won. But as the house grew quiet again, that power faded, replaced by the same hollow ache that never really left. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It breaks the parts of you that believed it could never happen. Weeks passed, but the rage never really faded. It just settled beneath the surface, simmering quietly, like embers waiting for dry wood. Mason adjusted better than I expected. Kids are resilient like that. But me? I was still trying to figure out how to live in a world where the two people I trusted most had turned my life into a nightmare. Then, out of nowhere, Nick resurfaced. I was picking Mason up from school, standing by my car, when I saw him across the parking lot. Same smug face, though he looked thinner, scruffier, like life had slapped him around a bit since he disappeared. Good. He deserved worse. But seeing him there, bold as ever, made my blood boil. He walked over, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets like we were about to catch up over beers. "Hey, man," he started, his voice casual, like he hadn't been screwed in my son's bed. I stared at him, jaw tight. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face." He nodded, like he expected that. I thought maybe we could talk." "Talk?" I laughed, sharp and humorless. "About what?" "You want to explain how my wife ended up under you, while I was breaking my back to support the both of you?" Nick flinched, but recovered quickly. "It wasn't like that." I stepped closer, closing the gap between us. "Then tell me, Nick, what was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty fucking simple." His eyes darted to Mason, who was busy climbing into the back seat, oblivious to the tension thick in the air. Nick lowered his voice. "Look, I know I messed up. I didn't mean to." "Don't finish that sentence unless you want to eat your own teeth." He shut up. I leaned in, my voice low and venomous. I want you to disappear. For good. No texts, no calls, no surprise parking lot reunions. If you ever come near me or Mason again, I swear to God, I'll make sure you regret it. He nodded quickly, his tough guy act crumbling. Okay, I get it. But just as he turned to leave, he threw one last grenade over his shoulder. You know, he said, not looking back, Emily was planning to leave you even before it happened. She just didn't have the guts. I didn't respond. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me react. But inside, his words hit harder than I expected. Because what if he was right? Later that night, I couldn't shake it. I kept thinking about everything. Her distance, the excuses, the way she'd pull away when I tried to be close. Had the affair been a symptom or just the final nail in a coffin she'd been building for years? So, I did something I hadn't done since she left. I went through her old emails. I didn't expect to find anything. I thought it would just be digital dust, old work stuff, spam. But then I found a folder buried deep in her inbox, one she probably thought I'd never see. It wasn't just emails to Nick. There were messages to someone else. Someone named Ryan. My heart pounded as I opened the first one. I can't do this much longer. Kyle's oblivious, but I feel trapped. You're the only one who makes me feel alive. Ryan wasn't just a friend. He wasn't even a coworker. He was another man, another affair. I kept reading, my hands shaking. The emails went back over a year, long before Nick moved in. Late-night meetups, hotel reservations, secret trips when she claimed she was visiting her sister. I felt sick. All this time, I thought Nick was the betrayal. He was just the tip of the iceberg. Emily had been cheating on me long before Nick. Hell, maybe Nick was just convenient, a warm body in the same house. But the real knife? She never stopped. Even after I caught her, even after the fallout, she continued to lie. The next morning, I didn't text her. I didn't call. I showed up at her apartment, phone in hand, emails pulled up. When she opened the door, her face went pale. She knew. Nick wasn't the first, was he? I asked, shoving the phone in her face. She didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she sighed, like she was the victim in all this. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, louder than I meant to. You didn't want to hurt me? Emily, that's literally all you've done. She crossed her arms, defensive now. We were broken long before Nick. You just didn't want to see it. You're right, I said, stepping back. I didn't. But I see it now. And with that, I left. Because there was nothing left to say. Nick betrayed me. Emily destroyed me. But the worst betrayal? I'd been lying to myself the whole time. Months passed, but the ache never really faded. It dulled, like an old scar, but it was always there, quietly pulsing beneath the surface. Life settled into a new kind of routine. Wake up, get Mason ready, work, go home, repeat. It was mechanical, like I was just checking off boxes, surviving one day at a time. Emily faded into the background. We kept communication strictly about Mason. Short, cold texts that read like business transactions. No more attempts at apologies. No more desperate pleas for conversations. She seemed to accept that whatever existed between us was buried for good. Nick disappeared entirely. No calls. No texts. No surprise appearances at my door. A part of me expected him to resurface like some bad habit, but he didn't. It was almost disappointing in a sick way. Hatred is easier when you have a face to aim it at. But he vanished like a ghost, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage. I thought that was the end, but endings are rarely that simple. It was a random Tuesday when I got the envelope. No return address. No name. Just my name scribbled on the front in messy handwriting. I almost tossed it in the trash, thinking it was junk, but something made me pause, an itch at the back of my mind. I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Emily, Nick, and Mason, taken from a distance, like through a window or across a street. They were at some park I didn't recognize, Mason on Nick's shoulders, Emily smiling beside them. A perfect little family portrait, only I wasn't in it. My hands shook as I flipped the photo over. Written on the back, in that same messy handwriting, were 5 words that made my blood run cold. He's not your son either. I stared at it, the words blurring as my mind raced. It had to be a joke, a sick, twisted joke, but something about it felt too deliberate, too personal. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went to the clinic. DNA test. No hesitation. I needed answers, even though I already felt the ground crumbling beneath me. 2 weeks later, the results came. 0% probability of paternity. I stared at the paper, my vision tunneling. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and scooped out everything that mattered. Mason, my Mason, wasn't mine. Every memory flashed through my mind. Teaching him to ride a bike, holding him when he was sick, his first day of school, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I'd kissed better, every laugh we shared. It was all built on a lie. I wanted to scream, to break something, to disappear. But then Mason came running into the room, his little face lighting up when he saw me. "Daddy, look what I drew." I looked at him, really looked at him. His messy hair, his toothy grin, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. And that's when it hit me. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. Because the truth wasn't in his DNA. It was in every moment we'd shared. Every time he called me Dad, every hug, every tear I'd wiped away. He was mine. Not because of biology, but because I'd chosen him. Because I'd never stopped choosing him. I folded the paper, shoved it in a drawer, and never looked at it again. But here's the twist, the part that'll keep you up at night. I never told Emily, and I never will, because she doesn't deserve to know that despite all her lies, she never really took anything from me. Not where it mattered. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling so you never miss an update on more jaw-dropping real-life stories. Catch you in the next video.